episode of A Blind Insight with me, Simon Hill, and Billy Spateman, who, if you were with us for the last show, will know that he spent his Sunday walking up and down a hill in the name of charity.
Certainly did.
How did you get on?
All right, really, it was good. I mean, it was probably Artist Day of the Year. David from Action Art did it with me. They're one of our charities this year. And we decided to start probably an hour earlier. So we started just after 10 o'clock in the morning. And, just trekked up and down Rowley Bonk, where I live, which is Bury Hill Park, really. And Keith, the chairman of the radio station, came along. Looked as though he was going to go onto a beach in Ibiza because he got his open-toed sandals. And I said, they're not really walking shoes, Keith. But he did great. He did about 4. My granddaughter came and did 3, I think, before she got fed up. David's dad did a few. And Andy Smith from the Crafty Jar came right at the very end and did 1. He said he couldn't find us, but I think he was parked behind the trees waiting for us to get near the end. Yeah, so it all went well. And we did have another chap, Paul Bennett from Anson's Solicitors in Cradley Heath, that was going to do it, but he's been quite poorly and he'd got quite a poorly chest, so he couldn't do it really because he was struggling for breath. But he donated £100 to each of our charities that we're working with, which is great. So all we've got to do now is collect all the sponsor money and stuff like that, and then add it onto our yearly bill. Our yearly amount. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, as long as mind you, it looks like you did it before the weather changed. So that's got to be a bonus. You wouldn't.
Yeah, it would have been a bit tricky in the rain because it gets really slippery. Going up and down the path. So it was great for us, really. Yeah, and we're now focusing on our charity football game.
Yes.
Against Sands, September the 1st at Tividale Football Club. So we'll be working up towards that now.
Excellent. Well. Bit of a slightly different show today in that I've got my first guest. I was going to say that, my weekend ended up being pretty miserable after...
Oh, yeah, the playoffs, wasn't it? Oh, my God.
Making the trek down to Southampton and, it didn't go as we'd hoped.
I can always tell because I live next door to my daughter and my son-in-law, and I always know when they're not doing very well because I can hear the groans through the wall. Yeah, he's banished to the kitchen to watch the television while the girls watch a film, and then you either hear yay or oh. And I knew, well into it that they weren't doing very well.
Yeah, it wasn't to be, but the main thing is we've got a new owner and things are looking at least more stable than they were a year ago, so that's the main thing. It was,
and sometimes it's like, they're not equipped as a Premiership side yet.
Not at the moment. No.
So it would be great financially, but then that ain't the be all and end all. If they're on a journey and building, then that's what they want to do. Within the proper surroundings, really, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, apart from the financial side, I'm not really fussed about being in the Premier League anymore because unless you've got huge amounts of money or, it's so difficult, as is demonstrated by the fact that the 3 clubs promoted last year have now come back down. Yeah. At least in the Championship, you haven't got VAR, and if you're competing at the top, you're winning more games. So, it's far more fun.
And strange things happening in the Chelsea boss just finishing, and they were on a sort of real run, weren't they? And he got them qualified for Europe. And it says mutual agreement, and strange things happening in the Premiership.
Well, it looks like it's one of those things. Just as he seemed to finally be getting things sorted, they then decide to part ways.
Yeah, part ways. Strange. Football's a strange game.
It is, and it never changes really. But anyway. So as I was saying, got my first guest on the show today. Not with us in person, but last week, the week that started the 22nd of May or whatever it was World Retinoblastoma Awareness Week, and retinoblastoma is what I had when I was a child, and that cost me my eyes. So I thought it would be good to try and speak to somebody from the Childhood Eye Cancer Trust to get them to talk more about the kind of, the things first and foremost that parents should be looking out for, and then the treatment and then the support that is available. So I was delighted to say that they agreed, and the CEO, not the CIO as I accidentally called him on the interview. So yeah, not senior investigative
That's
officer.
as bad as me on the Hammer and Chain show. We have a guest and his name's David, and I called him Peter for about an hour. And off air, he said, "Can I just tell you something?" Yeah. What? My name's actually Peter. Oh right, okay.
Yeah, we are in the moment, but but yeah. So anyway, the CEO Richard Ashton agreed to have a chat with me, and so I did that last week, and yeah, hopefully you'll find it interesting. And here's what we talked about. Richard, first of all, welcome and thanks for your time today.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, we'll just explain your role as the CIO. I hope I've got that right, of the Childhood Eye Cancer Trust. You work closely with people and their families affected by retinoblastoma, of which I'm one of them. So when I heard it was World Retinoblastoma Awareness Week, I thought it'd be good to speak to you about the illness, the signs to look out for, and the treatment and support that's available.
Absolutely, love to. Yeah, we're a small team. There's only 10 of us, 8 full-time equivalents, doing some really important work, as you say, looking to help and support all those affected by retinoblastoma.
Well, I think we better start by explaining what is retinoblastoma. I describe it to people as cancer of the eye, but I'm sure you can probably give a bit better explanation than that.
No, absolutely. And if I can just go back one bit, so the Childhood Eye Cancer Trust, and when we talk about it, we call it, to us, it's checked. Yeah. It's the only UK charity solely dedicated to helping families and individuals affected by retinoblastoma, which in itself is a rare form of eye cancer. Thankfully, it is rare, but it can be aggressive, and it affects babies and young children, mainly under the age of 6, with around 50 cases diagnosed each year in the UK, which equates to approximately 1 child per week. It actually represents 3% of all childhood cancers and 10% of all cancers in babies under the age of 1.
Well, you've kind of answered one or two of the things I was going to ask there, so that's great. But I just wondered what you thought about, because it strikes me that, well, I'm sure people are well aware that cancer can strike at adults anyway, at pretty much any age. But I just wonder whether there is the same kind of awareness that it can strike children as well.
I think it because it's a rare cancer. It is difficult, and we look to kind of like deliver 3 things. We look to provide support, raise awareness, and fund research. And around awareness, I mean, with only on average, 1 case per week, let's say you're a GP, it's rare that you'll see more than 1 case, if not even 1 case in your whole career. So we look to raise awareness with members of the public, but also the medical professions, the optometrists, the health visitors, and the GPs, because it's really important that this can be spotted early, so therefore referrals can be made to, firstly, the local hospital, and then to one of the only 2 centres in the UK, one in Birmingham at the Birmingham Children's and Women's Hospital, and the other one at Royal London in London.
I was treated at the Birmingham Children's Hospital initially, and then went down to or St Bart's, as it was,
yes,
to be treated there. So yeah, it was a long journey, and like I said, I experienced treatment in both those sort of locations. But so, I mean, what signs should parents look out for? I mean, the one that seems to be mentioned most to me, and was certainly what my own parents described, was spotting a sort of glint in the eye.
That's right. And really, it's, going back to the point, early diagnosis is absolutely crucial in order to save a child's eyes, sight, and life. And the most common symptoms are a white glow in a child's eye or pupil in dim lighting, or when a photo is taken using a flash, and or a squint. So they are the 2 key ones. Obviously, if an eye is red or swollen without any infection or sore, or indeed a change in the colour of the iris. But the key ones from our perspective are a white glow in the pupil and a squint. And a squint is where one eye looks in or out.
Is it easy to spot, as it were? Or is it very noticeable, or is it?
I think the signs can be subtle, and the key thing we always say is if you're unsure, speak with your health visitor, your GP, or go and see your local optometrist, who will then be able to look properly and identify if there is an issue or there isn't an issue.
And I mean, I've got to be careful how I word this, really, but you've said already that because it's so rare, often GPs haven't come across it or maybe aren't aware of it. Would it be? I mean, my personal advice would be to people is to go direct to, if you think, if you know enough to think this could be retinoblastoma, to go direct to one of the specialists. Is that possible, or is that what you would say? Or?
It's very difficult because obviously, as a parent, carer, or guardian, the key thing to you is the health and happiness of your child. And what we say is that in the first instance, see if you can go to your local optician, or if you speak to your GP or speak to your health visitor, they as soon as you can, they're in the best places. And if it's at a stage where none of that's possible, then we do suggest, in the rare occurrence that's needed, then pop down to your local A&E.
As always with these things, if you don't feel that your concerns have been taken seriously, I guess that is where someone like Checks could potentially advise or get involved a bit.
I think the key thing is that if you have a concern, majority of the time you are listened to, and it's important that you do just keep on saying that we do have a concern and make sure that your voice gets heard.
So in terms of treatment, I mean, when I was battling with retinoblastoma back in the mid-80s, early 90s, the treatment, what I had anyway, was a mix of chemotherapy for a bit and radiotherapy. I mean, you've already mentioned about the sort of ages that it can strike. For me, it was diagnosed in my right eye when I was 6 months old, and that eye was removed. And obviously that was hoped that would see it off, but unfortunately it did spread to my left eye. And then I gradually lost my sight in the left eye, completely gone by the time I was 4. And then, but even then, the left eye had to be removed still when I was about 7. So, as you've already said, it is or can be brutal. But in terms of, obviously, we're 20, 25, no more than that, 30 odd years further down the line. Treatment no doubt has come on, knowledge has improved. What's the general sort of treatment path these days?
Gosh, medical science is incredible, and I think at this stage it's really important to say both at Birmingham and London, the dedicated medical teams are absolutely superb. I think they're not, if not the best, they are among the best in the world. With the key point being is that there's no such thing as common RB, retinoblastoma. Each case is different, each case is individual, and that the treatment of retinoblastoma is individualized. As it stands at the moment, approximately just under half cases a child will need to have an eye removed as part of their treatment. It is individual. It is difficult to say, and there are a raft of different treatments that can be given. I mean, I think it's important to say at Checked, we very much deliver the support. We aren't doctors, we aren't clinical, and we work hand in hand with those clinical professionals to deliver. And we're there to offer what I would call emotional and practical, in some cases financial support. But we very much work hand in glove with the clinical teams who are the experts, and they will provide individualized treatments if that's required.
And this is a probably difficult question to answer, but do you know, I mean, you mentioned there about the sort of the number of cases where eyes have to be removed. Do you know what the sort of success rate is, as it were, as in do children keeping all of their sight part of their
gosh,
sight?
that's almost impossible for me to say. I mean,
Fair enough.
the key thing is that in all instances, the doctors will offer what they deem is correct, and now there's more eyes being saved rather than being enucleated, which means taken out. But equally within that, how much of that eyesight is saved versus how much it's difficult to say. I think the key thing to say is that 98% of all children who are diagnosed with retinoblastoma will survive, and that's a really important point to make. And as I've said, of which just under half will tragically will lose an eye. But that's equally changing as medical advances are made in terms of saving the eye versus saving the eyesight, and that's when it gets into each individual point. I think the key point to make is 98% of children will survive a diagnosis of retinoblastoma. There will be impacts, and that's important to recognise, but the survival rate for the individual is high.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I don't know how that would compare to other forms of cancer, but I mean, by any measure, that's a really good, encouraging.
And it is with the critical point. Yeah, the critical point being is early diagnosis is key. So if you notice a sign or symptom you're not too sure about, then it's important that you do seek medical advice as soon as possible, because the key thing is getting a diagnosis as soon as possible.
If coming out of the other side of retinoblastoma, then that, as you say, there is an aftermath to deal with, both emotionally and physically. And I find it a bit strange, really, because I obviously don't have retinoblastoma now, but the effects that it's left me with are with me every second of every day of my life. So it's difficult to sort of, you feel a fraud. You haven't got an illness, but you're still living with the effects.
Gosh.
So that's where checks sort of, come in for both, not just the child that's gone through, but of course the parents and the family.
I think that's the important point, and the key point there is that we are there and we're dedicated to anybody affected by retinoblastoma, because, as you say, the effects last. And bizarrely enough, to say that we're the Childhood Eye Cancer Trust is right, because the cancer presents itself in a child. However, in the first instance, we're there from pre-diagnosis. We provide lots of information and support and research. But as soon as the child is diagnosed, we are fortunate that we have 2 members of our team embedded in the 2 hospitals, and we're there for the parents, carers and guardians at that hardest initial time. We're there through to the treatments, then to the follow-up. We're also there for teenagers and for young adults and adults. Really, we are there for as long and as much as anybody wants us. So, for example, as a child, you have RB and you want to come and talk to us. As a young adult, come and talk to us, and we do have that. And we offer what we call a support pathway with different options and offers, and how we support right the way through from, as I say, 6 months or earlier, all the way through until you've decided you don't want us anymore, which right into adulthood.
Yeah, and as I say, my own personal experience of living with it, there are times in life where you go along and you're doing okay, but then other times you feel you're blindness or partially sighted, whatever it is you've been left with, throws up problems, and sometimes it's just talking to people who get it, for want of a better word, and there may not be, and there often isn't an answer as such, but it's just being able to speak to people who understand and feel that the same things that you do, be it as the person living with it or as parents and relatives having to watch and experience the suffering that your child's going through, but ultimately must feel a great sense of helplessness to that they can't fix this problem.
No, absolutely. And I think it was put very, I'm going to paraphrase something that somebody affected by RB wrote, that it's the type of club nobody wants to be in, but when you're in the club, it's a really important club to be in, because it is, you're right. we offer physical, as in meetups where you can all join together. We offer online meetups. We've got chat rooms. We've got Instagram. We've got Facebook. We've got all bits and pieces. And some of our job is signposting to other charities as appropriate, but equally we're there to provide a safe and informed space for people to talk, communicate, and feel part of, because it's, as you say, it's really important to talk. Really important.
And I mean, again, I don't know what sort of support was really around when I was going through it 30 odd years ago. But I think, when I look back now, it's a really strange concept, because I obviously knew that there was something not right, and I was having all this treatment and spending so many visits to hospital and this, that, and the other, and obviously ended up in major operations. But looking back, at no point did I really know what I was really up against. The severity of it, the fact that the fact was that ultimately, if the operations weren't done, then I wouldn't survive, and that all of that was sort of kept from me. But of course, your parents know that, and I remember, I distinctly remember one incident where my after, when I went to the hospital for treatment afterwards, my parents would go in for a sort of consultation with the doctors, etc. And the one day my parents came out of the room, my mom was crying, and I said, "Oh, what's wrong, Mom?" And she said, "Oh, they might be closing the hospital," which, and I sort of thought no more of it. But looking back now, I'm pretty certain that was when they were told that they hadn't stopped the cancer spreading to my left eye, and so that they had to take more action. So the things that parents must shield from their children is.
Do you know what? That's a really interesting point, Simon, because we're just coming to the end of one of the things I say we do is we fund research, and we funded this really interesting research from a PhD student, Nicola O'Dowd, who's looked at what's called the social impact of RB on teenagers, and she's spoken to teens and young adults, and the results of that really are fascinating, because not only will it allow us and the wider community in which we live in a better understanding of how we can help and support and communicate with those affected by RB, but equally a lot of the stuff that's coming out is memories like yours that you've just mentioned, which then will allow us to provide the type of information and the right level of support to parents, so they can work through and communicate in the right way with their children, but equally to people your age, Simon, saying, "Hey, we understand, we get that." So again, we can provide support. So that what we look to do is, we're not looking to any revolution here. We're looking to evolve our support to make sure it's right and relevant for those. So this research that has taken 3 years and it finishes in September, and then it needs to be reviewed before it can go to the next stage, will be absolutely is focused on what you just talked about. And it's really important that voices are heard and listened to, so we can evolve our support to make sure it's right and relevant, not only for teenagers and young adults, but also for adults and equally for parents.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange because, over the years, like I say, you sort of go through it with little understanding as the child, and you're almost trying to do it backwards. You're trying to go back to it and think, "Oh, what was that about?" Or, "Oh, so that's what that was to do with," and so on. And it's almost like a piece of your life that you lived but yet didn't understand somehow. And so speaking to other people who have been through it, because of course, because if it happens to you so young, you don't have many memories of it. But if it happens to you where you do have memories of it because you were old enough, then understanding that. And I think sometimes I know I wouldn't and haven't really had conversations with my parents about it, because I know they don't like to talk about it. But of course that doesn't help you as the individual that's suffered it ultimately, and so being able to speak to other people on the without the emotional connection to you, if you like, I think that's really, really important for people to be able to do.
No, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And that's why, we're a charity, but we're also a community. And to allow those conversations to happen.
Yeah, and so like I say, and the beauty of it is, as we say, if you might not need it all the time, it might just be little things. It might just be certain things you want advice from or advice about rather. But how can I know people can obviously find you online, get in touch by phone and email. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, really, the best and easiest way initially is to our website, which is chet.org.uk, which is CHECT.org.uk. And on there's all the information you could possibly find. There's telephone numbers, the email addresses, there's information leaflets, there's everything that you can need. And from that, that should provide a good starting and a basis and a starting point. And as I say, we are there for everybody and anybody that's been affected or is affected by RB.
And one of the things I quite like is I'm part of it. There's a WhatsApp group for for people. I don't know if it's just for people who have actually had RB themselves, but it's quite funny because you haven't met these people or even spoken to them usually, but people put in a random question and somebody comes back with an answer. So whether it's does anybody know something like an air fryer that I can use safely, or that's easy to use, and all sorts of random stuff. But it's just being able to connect with people who are in the same crazy situation sometimes that you are is just a very good thing to have available.
Yeah, absolutely, and again, it's that I reiterate, it's that safe space, and it's just important. It's wonderful when we have our meetups where people physically are in the same room together. They can communicate, whether that be parents, whether that be children, teenagers, adults, and that's an important point of what we do, because of course the critical time initially is in diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up in the hospital. But then after that, we're still around to help beyond that.
And just finally, I guess at the end of the day, you are a charity, and so of course funds are needed to keep the work going. I guess if people would like to donate or do something to raise money for checks, there's that sort of thing that goes on as well. I've seen marathon running, all that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Still recovering from doing it, not like this year, last year. But I think that the key point here is that we don't get any government funding or regulatory funding. We rely 100% on donations, and to allow us to deliver what we want to deliver. And so lots of ideas on there about fundraising and how people can help. But the key thing is that every pound matters, and that's what we need to do. And if we can get people, the more people who can donate to us, the better, because that just means the more we can do.
Absolutely, and I think I'm not asking you to comment on this, but just my personal thought is that sometimes a lot of people think, I'll raise money for cancer, and they do it for Cancer Research UK or the so-called bigger or well-known charities. But sometimes really it's better, I think, to sort of go more specific, for the because it's such a vast area, obviously, cancer treatment. But to go for the ones which are not as well known, and therefore struggle to get the word out there, and at the end of the day, without the work that they do, then these less known about cancers, wouldn't get the research and the improved likelihood of people surviving them. So yeah, I think rather than just putting all the money into the one big pot, if you like, if people make it a bit more personal, and raise money for a smaller cancer charity, then that's an important thing, I would say. But thank you very much for your time. And obviously, if anybody have got any questions, they can get in touch, as you've said. And hopefully people have found it helpful. And thank you very much for your time, Richard.
It's important from me and also from the charity side to say thank you to you, because it's really important that those that have been affected by RB have a voice, not only have a voice, but that voice is heard. And by doing what you do, that really aims, that helps our aim and really helps us. So, from all of us to you, thank you. We really do appreciate everything that you do.
No, well, like I say, it's a topic that's, like I say, I may not have retinoblastoma here today, but the effects will be with me forever. And so I think it's you're not fighting the same thing, but you're still battling things because of it. So it's it's important to keep saying, look, it never really goes away as such, the aftermath, and so to keep talking about it. And obviously, the success rates, as you've already mentioned, are obviously very, very good. But like you say, the more people know about it, if a child is unfortunate enough to get struck by it, then catch it early, get it dealt with, and hopefully, the child can then go on and be perfectly healthy afterwards. So, that's all very good. So maybe we'll speak to you again in the future. I mean, if Chet's got any particular events on, then give me a shout, and we'll get you back on to tell everybody about those. But in the meantime, I'll speak to you soon.
Great, thank you so much.
So thanks to Richard from Chet to the Childhood Eye Cancer Trust, and hopefully people found that interesting and useful, and obviously lots of good advice in there. And again, if you have any questions or want to find out any more, then you can visit the Chet website or even contact them directly. And they're a helpful and friendly bunch. And as I mentioned in the interview, in terms of raising money, if you are looking for causes to raise money for, rather than just going for the big well-known Cancer Research UK, I think it is nice to be a bit more specific sometimes and go for the smaller charities who aren't as well known and struggle to get the same kind of funding. So bear them in mind for any future marathons or whatever else you might be doing in the future.
Can I just ask, has research found that there's anything hereditary with that, that particular blindness, or can it,
Yeah, it is. So me, for example, there's a 50-50 chance if I was to have a child that I would pass it on. My personal circumstance, there was nothing in my family history to suggest where it came from, so it looks like it can just be a pure fluke. Yeah. But if you have had it, then you then need to be aware that there is a 50-50 chance you could pass it on to any children you have.
Yeah. Oh, right. Interesting.
And again, if anyone's got any questions or wants me to delve any further into my experience with it, then feel free to drop me an email, simonhill_6@hotmail.com.
Oh, come back, common sense. Oh, send me a postcard from wherever you go. Tell me what it's like there, I really want to know. And the world's gone insane ever since you disappeared. Hey, common sense, how I wish you were here. Hey, common sense, yeah, I wish you were here.
Yes, I was forced or prompted to come back common sense for this episode because, well, in response to a news headline or story that came out a couple of days ago, which really got my goat, to be honest, but it got me thinking about something that has been bugging me for a while now, which seems to be getting progressively more crazy in my view. But so it was reported that Ofcom were looking at sanctioning the GB News channel for a programme they aired a couple of months ago where the PM, Richie Sunak, was basically held a Q&A session with an audience up north somewhere. I think it was Scunthorpe, I can't remember exactly where. And basically the audience asked questions and he answered them, and it was just on for about an hour. And I watched the show, and I can assure you that it wasn't just a gathering of the local Conservative Association or anything like that. It was all sorts of people asking all sorts of questions, and he got a real grilling, to be honest. So, you know, I couldn't see anything biased or wrong with it at all. But yet, lo and behold, it's been claimed that it didn't give fair views, or you know, they're not happy with it. But like I say, I don't agree with that personally. But anyway, it got me thinking about the general issue, which when you put on a TV program these days, and even radio show, we seem to be getting an ever-growing list of warnings before it starts. The following program contains strong language, or even very strong language. Now I'm not quite sure where
the ones that kill me are when it's usually on Gold, when you've got an old series,
Yeah.
you know, and they'll go, we'd like to warn you that this was recorded in an age of so and so, and you think,
Yeah.
well, what on earth is in an age of so and so?
But the thing is, what my view is, that at the end of the day, if you don't know by now what that program is and what it's about and the humour, and you know, why'd you watch it? You know, there seems to be people out there who watch things purely to then complain about it.
Yeah,
You know, it's like going to a football match and then complaining they're not playing rugby.
yeah.
You know, and
I think it was Mary Whitehouse in our day, and everybody that, you know, she was like banging the drum on behalf of everybody. And the folks, you know, from the other side were saying, well, there is something called a button that you can press if you don't want to watch it. So just press the button and change the channel.
well, you know, I'm personally not a fan of reality TV shows, so I don't watch them.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I stopped watching the soaps about 10, 15 years ago because I thought they got ridiculous. You know, I find something else to watch. You know, it's not as if we're stuck with just 4 channels anymore, or whatever it used to be. And the things as well, and even more annoying, for those of us that like a show, yes, you know, there are some jokes that some people would deem inappropriate, etc. But, you know, that's how the show was. That's how it was made. It's part of the show. It was done, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And now they cut out. So if you know the episodes, they cut out
The
parts of it.
Yeah.
And you just think, well, what, you know, leave it in. At the end of the day, if you watch something, you just either think, oh no, this isn't for me, switch it off, or you say, I don't watch it again. Why do we need this? I don't know what it is, mollycoddling, or
Dave Dinsdale, who does a program, it's comedy and nostalgia on Black Country Extra.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of, and it is what it says. So he'll do old comedians, old TV adverts, old theme tunes, old clips from shows, and he spends hours and hours editing them so that they can be broadcast now. And, you know, and he just says, and when you listen to him, you just think, well, this is ludicrous. Why am I taking this out? But I can't put it in because somebody might say, oh, well, you can't broadcast that now.
But then if you watch, say, you know, some of these stand-up comedians on telly, they go on stage and they're swearing, and then the audience are laughing. So where are these complaints coming from? I don't understand. Why on earth if you've got the time, if you've got nothing else better to worry about than to watch something, decide you don't like it, and then go to the bother of, you know, writing in to complain about it. I don't understand.
I was surprised. I read the review of John Cleese's Fawlty Towers that's just gone on to stage, and I thought, well, how on earth can this, in this day and age, get onto stage where you've got, you know, this bloke abusing this poor little
physically
waiter,
and verbally abusing this Spanish man,
and then it got rave reviews, and I was thinking, is this an actual contradiction of what's going on at the moment, or has somebody not cottoned and they're going to complain about it shortly? You know, in the end, it's a piece of theatre that's a bit of fun, as far as I'm concerned.
But at the end of the day, if it's not your taste, then fair enough.
Well, you ain't got to buy the ticket and not watch it, have you?
You know, but you don't. Does it give you the right to try and stop other people enjoy it? You know, we're back into this thing of, you know, trying to stop other people doing something that certain people don't agree with or approve of.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, it's not like we're talking about, you know, something that causes harm. It's just words.
The thing that I get offended is you get some person who will say, I am speaking on behalf of... Well, they ain't speaking on behalf of me. I can make my own mind up. You know what I mean? So who are they speaking on behalf of?
Well, you know, my favourite is when they say, oh, you know, a certain percentage of people in the UK think there's like, well, you haven't asked me.
Yeah, yeah.
so
And where's the percentage come from?
So they just
Yeah, it does baffle me, to be honest. And I also think, well, is it only visual things? Because in music, you can get away with what you want. You can almost say what you want in music. In comedy, you can't now, because David has loads of local comedians and comedians that have been on the circuit for ages that have completely had to change, the content and the jokes of what they say. But it doesn't appear to affect music as such. Music seems to be able to do what it wants to, really.
Well, just coming to my head, an example that there was a song, I can't remember who sang it now, but it was a few years ago. There was a song released called something like "Sweet But Psycho," and but I thought, hang on a minute, how can you get away with singing about? Yeah, and that it was a rave hit record.
Yeah,
and I think if you called somebody that on TV or there'd be uproar.
Well, they still play things like Talking Heads, Psycho Killer, and you think, hang on a minute, how can they not get away with it in the theatre, but in a record it's fine? Maybe it's the media that it is,
Or the media obviously sort of allow it to happen, or but I mean, on the most basic form of it, swearing, bad language. Like I said, you've now got the wall in strong language, then very strong language. Yeah. But I think, are you seriously telling me that there are people out there who go through their life and they never come across, they don't, say a bad word themselves, or they don't hear one until they put these programs on?
Yeah.
I just...
It's a lot to do with the environment. I mean, Katie, who comes to do the dementia program, she very often talks about the shock when families that are coming to visit somebody with dementia hear them swear for the first time. And Katie has to explain, part of the process of dementia is it brings out something that's deep down inside. They've probably never swore in front of you, but in their workplace, they probably used it all the time, and dementia has brought it out, and it's a massive shock, isn't it? Yeah. But it is a field that seems to be, I don't know, it seems to be going down this path that certain people think that they can be righteous for you.
Yeah, and this isn't good for you, or you don't like this, we can't have this.
Yeah.
But then I think, well, where do you draw the line? Where's with a lot of these things, where's the line? Where do we say, I mean, are we going to get to the point where these programs get banned completely? Or are they, we could have decades of TV, history, which millions of people have loved and still love, just banned from us even watching it, and on whose say so? It's just.
I think there are certain programs that won't get an airing, but you can only get them on YouTube.
Yeah.
This is according to David. He'll say, "Well, I can't. I won't be able to play this because it's not on Gold. It's not on whatever it is, Talkback or whatever it is." Yeah. Purely because of the content of when it was recorded, really. And it's just baffling. It's completely baffling.
How many, time and time again, films come out full of violence, and even the soaps, that's even before The Watershed. And yet you have, murders, stabbings, all sorts of crazy schemes, You think, God, children are watching this.
And it seems to be, if they put into the storyline something that's current and issue-based, that's fine, whether it's violent or, or abuse or something like that. But in another context, you can't talk about those things. So it's almost like there's a double standard going on, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I would much rather Ofcom spend their time dealing with things like, for example, broadband contracts. Well, I'm just in the process of looking around for a new broadband deal, and the thing now seems to be that they'll make you sign up for a 1 or 2 year contract, well, a 2 year contract in particular, but they say, the price will increase by X amount plus the consumer price index or X amount of percent. And I think, hang on a minute, so yes, you're stating it, but you're still saying that you can move the goalposts during the contract, but if I want to move the goalpost or leave early,
you can't.
I get charged.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, they've got to out the short and curlies, haven't they? Completely and utterly, really. But at the end of the day, you buy your telly, you've got your whatever it is, how many channels you want. it's down to you to choose what you want to watch and what you don't want to watch. There's enough channels, you can find something, can't you, somewhere?
Well,
so just don't watch the other thing, and it won't upset you.
well, listen, surely we're responsible enough as humans to, make that decision. But more to the point, don't complain about it, because just because you don't like it, it doesn't mean that. So, and at the end of the day, if in the end, the best thing you can do, if you really want, is just not put it on. Because if they do get these viewing figures or whatever, if the viewing figures plummet, that's what determines that they get rid of it. But to try and force other people, just because you don't like it, to try and then stop other people from watching it, essentially, just isn't.
It doesn't bear logic. No, we've got about a minute left, and I suppose you could transfer it to sport and say certain bodies make rules for sport, but they never come to the grassroots and say,
"Oh gosh, yeah." Well,
what do you think of this? It's just like, right, we have decided that this will work for you.
Yeah.
And then the guys on the front line will go, well, actually, it won't.
You haven't discussed it with us. So
you haven't discussed it, no.
Hey, common sense, how I wish you were here. Hey, common sense, yeah, I wish you were here.
Well, I hope you found my chat with Richard from the Childhood Eye Cancer Trust interesting and informative, and our views on the ever-growing list of warnings before TV and radio programs amusing. And as always, I'd like to hear your thoughts, so tell me if you agree or if you think we're talking rubbish. Email me at simonhill_6@hotmail.com. The next episode will be a bit of a different one, because I'll be marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day with a bit of a history lesson and some music from the time. So join us for that. Until then, stay safe and stay sane.